The audience inside the Ed Sullivan Theater was buzzing with anticipation. It was a cool evening in New York City, and fans of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert had packed the seats, eager for the quick wit, political satire, and banter that the show was famous for. Colbert's reputation as a master of late-night comedy was secure. Few could match his ability to cut down politicians with a smile and a laugh. His interviews often leaned toward playful sparring, but everyone knew he preferred to have the upper hand. That night, however, his guest was someone not usually associated with late-night comedy circuits, Pam Bondi. As the former Attorney General of Florida, she was known for her sharp legal mind, her unapologetic defense of conservative positions, and her ability to command attention in contentious debates. Bondi was no stranger to tough interviews, but late-night TV was different. The audience leaned heavily liberal, and Colbert's humor often thrived on poking fun at figures like her. Many expected she'd be walking into a lion's den. The band struck up a jazzy number as Colbert strutted out to applause, delivering his signature monologue with ease. He poked fun at the day's headlines, roasted a few politicians, and sprinkled in quick one-liners that had the crowd roaring. By the time he rapped, the mood in the studio was electric. And now, Colbert said with a mischievous grin, "Please welcome my guest tonight, former Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bondi." The applause was polite but mixed, a blend of curiosity, skepticism, and perhaps a touch of hostility from an audience not quite sure what to expect. Bondi walked onto the stage in a sleek, tailored suit, smiling with the kind of poise that suggested she had no intention of being intimidated. She shook Colbert's hand firmly and settled into her chair. Colbert began with charm, as he usually did. "Pam, welcome to the show. It's always nice to have someone from Florida, though I hear the humidity follows you everywhere." The audience chuckled, a safe opener that kept things light. Bondi laughed politely. "Well, Stephen, I can assure you, I didn't bring the humidity with me. Just a little sunshine." The banter started harmlessly enough. They exchanged a few words about Florida, the weather, and her career. But Colbert, never one to stay away from politics for long, soon sharpened his tone. "So," he said, leaning forward with mock seriousness, "you were Attorney General of Florida. That must have been interesting. I mean, between gators, hurricanes, and, lawsuits. Which one was scarier?" The crowd laughed. Bondi smiled, unfazed. "Well, Stephen, I'd say the lawsuits. Gators and hurricanes are predictable. Lawyers, not so much." The audience gave a polite chuckle. Colbert smirked, realizing she wasn't going to be an easy target. Then came the pivot. Colbert raised his eyebrows and delivered a line with that trademark blend of humor and edge. "You've defended some pretty controversial positions over the years. I've got to ask, do you ever wake up in the morning and say, 'Wow, I really made life harder for late-night comedians'?" The crowd laughed and clapped, anticipating that Bondi would stumble or backpedal. Instead, she leaned back comfortably, her smile never wavering. "Well, Stephen," she said smoothly, "I figured you could use the job security. Someone has to give you material." The audience laughed louder than expected, and Colbert's smirk faltered for just a moment. The exchange was playful, but Bondi's quickness caught him off guard. Colbert shifted gears. "All right, fair enough. But seriously, Pam, you've been at the center of some heated national debates. You've taken positions a lot of people in this room probably disagree with." He gestured toward the audience, who applauded at the implied criticism. "Do you ever feel like maybe you're on the wrong side of history?" It was the kind of question designed to put a guest on the defensive. The crowd leaned in, waiting for Bondi to squirm. Instead, she crossed her legs, folded her hands, and took a breath before answering. "I think history is written in chapters, Stephen," she said calmly. "And sometimes the people writing those chapters at the moment are more interested in headlines than truth. My job was never about being popular. It was about upholding the law, even when it wasn't convenient." The audience quieted. It wasn't the rousing applause line Colbert might have wanted, but it wasn't a stumble either. It was measured, steady, and unexpectedly firm. Colbert quickly tried to lighten the mood with another jab. "Well, I suppose lawyers are used to defending the indefensible." The audience chuckled, though the laughter was thinner this time. Bondi raised an eyebrow but didn't respond immediately, letting the moment hang just long enough to make Colbert shift in his chair. The interview continued, the back and forth resembling a chess match. Colbert fired off quips, attempting to keep her on the defensive, while Bondi deflected with grace and the occasional pointed reply. The audience could sense the tension building, the undercurrent of a showdown forming. And then it happened, the moment Colbert leaned too far. With that familiar gleam in his eye, he delivered a line that he clearly believed would land as the knockout punch, the kind of zinger that would go viral the next morning. But instead of recoiling, Bondi straightened in her chair, fixed him with a cool, unshaken stare, and prepared to respond. The crowd, sensing something was about to happen, grew unusually quiet. It was the setup to a moment no one in the theater would soon forget. The hush that fell over the Ed Sullivan Theater was unlike anything the show's audience had experienced before. Stephen Colbert had just lobbed what he believed was his most cutting line yet, the kind of zinger designed to reduce his guests to silence or awkward laughter. But as the seconds stretched, it became clear that Pam Bondi was not about to play the role he had written for her. She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly, her smile tightening into something sharper. "Stephen," she began, her voice cool and deliberate, "I know you make a living out of turning serious issues into punchlines, but let me remind you, when you're done joking, people like me are the ones who have to clean up the mess in the real world." The audience gasped audibly. The tension was thick, and Colbert, for once, was caught off guard. He blinked, his rehearsed grin faltering as Bondi's words cut deeper than any comedic jab could. "She didn't stop there. You call what I did, defending the indefensible," she continued, her voice rising with conviction. "But while you were here in New York cracking jokes, I was in Florida putting away human traffickers, shutting down fraud schemes, and protecting families from predators. If that's what you call indefensible, then maybe the problem isn't me, it's your definition of justice." The crowd erupted, not with laughter, but with a mix of applause, cheers, and gasps. A murmur spread through the theater, the kind of electricity that only comes when the script has been thrown out the window and something real is happening. Colbert tried to interject with a half-formed quip. "Well, I guess I've been told," but Bondi didn't let up. "And here's the thing, Stephen," she said, leaning even closer, her tone suddenly playful but edged with steel. "You make fun of people like me because it's safe. Because you know your audience will laugh. But deep down, you know what I know. If you had to face the criminals I faced, if you had to take the risks I took, you wouldn't be joking, you'd be thanking me." The audience roared. Some clapped, some shouted, some even stood. Colbert, usually quick to regain control, found himself struggling. His eyes darted to the audience, searching for support in laughter, but the response wasn't what he had counted on. Bondi, sensing the shift, delivered the line that sealed the moment. "So go ahead, Stephen, make me your punchline. But just remember, every time you laugh at me, there's a victim out there who's glad I didn't laugh back." The theater erupted into thunderous applause. Some of the audience members who had walked in skeptical of Bondi were now cheering her on, swept up in the sheer force of her conviction. Even those who disagreed with her politics couldn't deny that she had just turned the tables on one of the sharpest wits in television. Colbert leaned back, momentarily speechless. His trademark smirk had faded into something more cautious, almost reflective. For once, he looked like the guest on his own show. Finally, he tried to recover with humor. "Well, this has been fun. Remind me never to get into an argument with a former attorney general." The crowd laughed lightly, but it was clear the balance had shifted. The laughter wasn't at Bondi's expense anymore, it was at Colbert's. Bondi smiled, gracious but firm. "Smart choice," she said, her tone dripping with confidence. The interview moved on, but everyone in the room knew the fireworks had already gone off. Colbert, normally adept at keeping the upper hand, softened his approach, tossing lighter questions her way. But the damage, or, depending on perspective, the victory, was already done. Pam Bondi had stunned Stephen Colbert on his own stage, and everyone knew it. When the cameras cut to commercial, the audience was still buzzing. Some leaned over to each other, whispering, "Did you hear what she just said?" Others shook their heads in disbelief. One woman in the front row summed it up perfectly. "I did not see that coming." The ripple effect was immediate. By the time the show ended and clips began surfacing online, Twitter, or rather, X, was on fire. One clip in particular, Bondi leaning in and saying, "Every time you laugh at me, there's a victim out there who's glad I didn't laugh back," spread like wildfire. Conservative commentators hailed it as a victory, sharing it with captions like, "Pam Bondi just wrecked Colbert." Meanwhile, even some liberals admitted, begrudgingly, that Bondi had handled herself with unexpected poise and ferocity. Within hours, hashtags began trending. Hashtag Bondi vs Colbert, hashtag Savage Comeback, hashtag Late Show Showdown. Memes flooded the internet, screenshots of Colbert's stunned face juxtaposed with Bondi's confident smirk. Even mainstream news outlets picked up the story, with headlines like, Pam Bondi shocks late-night crowd with Colbert takedown, and, when the guest becomes the host. The following morning, talk radio and cable news were abuzz. On conservative stations, Bondi was praised as a hero for standing her ground in hostile territory. On liberal platforms, some defended Colbert while others admitted he'd been caught off guard. One media critic summed it up. Love her or hate her, Pam Bondi showed she can go toe-to-toe with one of the sharpest minds in television, and win. As for Colbert, he took the loss in stride, joking about it on the next night's show. So, last night, I learned something important, he quipped during his monologue. Never invite a lawyer on your show unless you've got your own lawyer sitting next to you. The audience laughed, but there was a knowing tone in his voice. He knew he had been bested, at least for one night. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, embraced the moment. In interviews the following days, she laughed off the viral clip but didn't hide her satisfaction. I wasn't there to play games, she said in one radio appearance. I was there to be honest. And sometimes honesty makes people uncomfortable, especially comedians. The showdown became one of those rare late-night moments that transcended politics, comedy, and entertainment. It was raw, unscripted, and unforgettable. For Pam Bondi, it was proof that she could hold her own in the most unlikely of arenas. For Stephen Colbert, it was a reminder that even the sharpest tongue can be outmatched when faced with conviction and confidence. And for the audience in the Ed Sullivan Theater that night, it was a story they'd tell for years. The night Pam Bondi walked onto The Late Show and left Stephen Colbert speechless.